Hey, welcome once again to Rise of the GM, where today we're going to be talking about someone falsely accused. We're going to be looking at a remorseful wizard as our NPC of the day and talking about places of note in our Places series right here on Rise of the GM. Well, Adam, here we are. It has been a super cold week. I think everybody has experienced that. And if it wasn't enough that it's just cold, one of our furnaces here at Campus House just keeps having these problems, and we actually had it replaced, but it still keeps having these things, and so I'm dealing with that. And then our furnace at home just feels like it can't keep up with the cold weather. It couldn't the last couple days, and we're just watching the temperature go down and down, and we're like, okay, we'll make it through this. Luckily now it's rising again because we've gotten past that -2 stretch.
Yeah, right.
I was talking to a guy in Wisconsin this morning, and he's like, yeah, we just had -27 was our low. And I'm like, I'm glad I don't live there. My furnace could not have handled it. But anyway, how have you been handling the cold and the snow of, are you guys in your first week of school or second?
Second week now, ending the second one. So yeah, it's cold. I was complaining about my walking back and forth earlier, and I told Matthew earlier, I chopped all my hair off, and then I'm like, why did I wait till winter to do that? So, been freezing,
you never realize how much a haircut changes the heat of your head.
Yeah.
It does. It does a lot.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the weekend. This weekend is Winter War in Champaign-Urbana in Champaign. And I'm going to head that way this weekend to go play a little close action with our Barry Hudek here that's in the chat. And I'm going to play some Starfinder in the afternoon with people I don't know. That's going to be awesome. And hopefully. And Winter War. So
isn't it great that Winter War is so aptly named this year? It is definitely winter.
It is
now. And so if you're going to go get into something that's fantasy based at Winter War, I would suggest a Frost Giant. Play a Frost Giant. It would just be thematic right now. Maybe even if you're on a ship, if you're a captain, say I want to be a Frost Giant captain.
Yeah,
is that allowed? It changes nothing in the game, just for flavor. Oh man! All right. Well, we are today going to be talking about places of note when we get to our main topic, but we're going to start with an encounter. We always start with an encounter from this book from Gnome Stew called Eureka, just to give you ideas out here in the GM land. But again, if you like these, you can go buy the book. It is called Eureka 501. What is it? 501 adventure plots to inspire game masters. And those sorts of things are very helpful. Today we have one, excuse me. Today we have one called Wanted Dead. And it doesn't say or alive. You know, the old Bon Jovi song, Wanted Dead or Alive. This is just Wanted Dead. So entering a city that they visited before, your PCs see a wanted poster that depicts their party. The listed crimes are all heinous acts, including murder. I mean, just horrible things that your party hopefully doesn't do. Hopefully you have good or at least neutral players and not all evil. But these listed crimes are entirely untrue. The poster offers, though, a significant bounty for your PC's heads. Give your PCs a chance to go to ground before anyone spots them, but not before they've noticed that nearly every local is armed, right? Everybody is kind of ready. Once they're in hiding, the party can begin to discuss the posters. Let them have that discussion. Why are they wanted? Who did they make mad recently? Should they present themselves to the magistrate to try and explain the situation, or will that just land them in hot soup? Let them kind of make those decisions. But what's going to happen is the posters are part of a plot by a group of corrupt rival adventurers. And you'll have these sometimes, these rival adventure parties, right? It's kind of, as far as adventurers go, that's your kinsman. But this rival adventuring party wants them out of the way so that they can fill the PC's shoes claiming the glory and the treasure for adventures in this region. So the rivals are the ones who actually committed the crimes themselves, and they successfully pinned it on the PCs. And they're the ones behind the reward money. They've posted that up there. And they've bribed a corrupt city magistrate to overlook the holes in their story, which there probably are some, and the crimes themselves in favor of a full-on manhunt for the PC. So they've got a twisted politician in their pocket as well. While the PCs are investigating the situation, they hear a lot of locals praising these adventurers who caught them in the act and are even now pursuing them tirelessly. The adventurers are believed to have followed the PC's trail out into the forest, and they're counting on the citizens to stay vigilant in their absence. It's largely true. The scoundrels are hiding in the forest, but they're really just waiting for the city watch or an angry mob of people to take out the PCs for them, so they don't have to. Skilled adventurers in their own right, though, this other party, the rivals, have found an alliance with a tribe of kobolds in the forest whom they've hired as scouts. And so the kobold scouts, if they spot the PCs, they'll alert the rivals before the PCs arrive. Though their guard is relaxed, the adventurers aren't easy prey. And so killing them won't solve the PC's problems either, because they'll still have to convince the city that they're innocent and that the crimes for which they were accused are actually committed by the rival adventurers. So if they get these rival people without killing them all, en route back to the city, the kobolds will strike because they haven't been paid yet. They'll try to take the party's gold to make up for it. If the PCs took the rivals prisoner and they're heading back, they may be able to resolve the situation through diplomatic means, maybe convincing the kobolds that their employers are going to get their just desserts. You can close the adventure with a dramatic courtroom scene if that would work well for your group. I've only had one courtroom scene ever, and it ended in a lynching. So you can define what success looks like.
Rough,
but this is the adventure here. You got you're being framed by a rival adventuring party with all of what was said before. How would you use something like this, or what do you think of this kind of adventure little encounter?
Yeah, I think this is a really fun one. I like it too. The thing I would want to there's a lot going on in the chat already. What I just said, make your courtroom like the Seinfeld finale. So yeah,
where they're all just sitting in jail and that's it.
Yeah. I really like this. I have been on the record before as saying I really love the like other adventuring parties out in the world, and how that can be like friendly or competitive or even hostile kind of thing. And I like that a lot. I like that there's like an antagonist kind of group out there for that. I think it's cool. Just as like a silly thing, I would love to explain these wanted posters in a way that's like pushing on characters like the things that their
flaws.
Yeah, their flaws are just like what they're concerned about. I can't think of the right word right now, but they're like sensitivities of like, it's like just explaining it and like, that's not what I look like, kind of thing, but just like playing that up a little bit to mess with them in that way too, where it's like almost like a dig that's being made by
insecurities.
Yeah.
By the way, I always forget that we can do this, but we can throw people's their comments right up here on the screen. Yep. We always read them. We need to start throwing those up there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Not the players' insecurities, but the character insecurities kind of thing, and play with that. But I love it. I think like I have that question all the time of like, immediately there's this understanding of like, okay, we see wanted posters about us, everybody's armed, we better go underground. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's the first move that I see people that I play with doing. I don't know what I see that, but like going underground and hiding, I'm unsure if that's actually the thing that would happen. And does that throw off the rest of the situation,
Well, I think so. If it were me, I would expect that might not be the first thing to come to mind. But what I would do is, okay, this is a place they've already been before. So there's people they know. I'd find some people that they kind of got along with, maybe even liked, who feel like they've done wrong, but they're with kind of a group of others, maybe not a full on mob, maybe not the full town, but you got a group of maybe 6, 7, 10 guys, whatever. And they're like, hey, that's them. Let's get them. And of course, it's people you don't want to hurt. So they're not going to just out and kill these like townspeople. So how do this becomes a little encounter in its own. How do they like incapacitate and get away from these people without killing them?
Right.
And starting like a huge riot. And you might even have like another little group of 3 or 4 come along that notice them enough that they realize, man, this is just going to keep going unless we get out of here. That's what I would do as a GM, because their first thought's probably not going to be, let's hunker down and see what's going on.
Right.
It's going to be, so before they walk, directly to the center of town and start shouting, we're good, whatever, I would make some people notice them and kind of come ready for battle. But they've just got like rakes and like an old broom handle and whatever it is. So they're not adventurers. And, of course, they're people that your party doesn't want to kill. So I would do that and trickle in people till they get the idea that this isn't going to end. We got to get out of here somehow and not kill people in the meantime. So
for sure,
that might be a solution to that.
Yeah.
But then you've got the whole how are they going to prove it sort of thing. Even if they figure out how to get the other PCs, you don't want to kill all them, or then it's like it seems like you are really bad. So now what?
Yeah, as Rob said, raise the city there in the
which is what a lot of PCs might do. They're like, oh, I know what we'll do. Just mow it down. That's why it's got to be a city they've been to before with some people they like.
Some care there, yeah. I do think like from the GM standpoint with this, having a few clues or like ways that they could prove that it's not them, like kind of in your mind going into this, is probably worthwhile. Because if there is this point where it's like, okay, well, we got away from the city, away from the people who are wanting to tar and feather everybody, and it's like the people that are trying to throw us in jail or take us out or whatever because we've been framed. We got away from the city. We're out in the forest. We find these people. It's like you can't. If you do just kill them, and kill all the kobolds and everything, there's no witnesses to prove your innocence. So like, I think adding some clues from the GM standpoint of like something that they can say, no, this is what shows that these people are actually the people who did it, not us, kind of deal, would be helpful.
Yeah. And you probably will have them to have met the other adventuring party at some point, right? So they know who these people are.
Yeah, right.
And then, as the townspeople are running over, they can be like, okay, so who were we in the Rob's campaign? The Wanderers and who was the other?
Travelers.
The Travelers.
Yeah.
We're so different. The Wanderers and the Travelers. But like whichever one you say we're the Wanderers, the people running up can be like, look, it's just like the Travelers said. Yeah. And then you have a clue. Oh, I know who's behind this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you can go from there.
Yeah, I do think that's helpful.
I don't know what I think about ending up in the courtroom thing. The one time I did a courtroom, it was all kinds of not following Robert's Rules of Order at all. Yeah. Everybody was.
It was a riot. So
it was a riot.
It
turned into it.
I think it kind of depends on that's one of those I would definitely try to gauge. Like, are the people around the table, like, is this interesting to them, or do you just want a little more like action, kind of thing, or to kind of like explain it, like, and this is what happened in the court and they proved it, and kind of move on from that. But
the comments today are great.
Yeah,
we're not reading every one of them out loud, but we're reading them as they come in.
I love it. I
love the Van Buren Boys too. That's a throwback to "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Right?
Oh,
it's the Van Buren Boys. Maybe I'm off on that.
I was thinking about like going back with the kobolds in the forest and all that stuff. I think like having maybe some more breadcrumbs also for the party, if they are heading that way, would be like helpful too. Cause there is that aspect of like, okay, they're hearing the talk about like, oh yeah, they took care of this and they're chasing them out in the woods. And you kind of get that sense of like, okay, well, we need to go, if we're going to deal with them, we got to go out in the forest. But I would want to add again as the GM like a little more lead for that about like maybe one of those party members, the hostile ones, like they see them and they're fleeing out into the forest and they chase them down or something to lead them a little more that way, because I think there's a couple points in this that the group could just kind of stagnate a little bit and like not really know what's the next step. So just trying to help that out a little bit. But,
Rob points out that bureaucracy doesn't typically tend to lead to action-packed RPG scenes. And that's true unless you make up a bunch of skills. It's like, okay, quick, roll your diplomacy, roll your filling out, cutting through the red tape skill.
Yeah,
make up skills.
Yep. If anybody out there knows of a good Justice Department RPG out there that you can just like play as
a whole RPG
courtroom drama, then there may be a hole out there that could be filled by somebody making a good RPG.
This could be your next $1 million idea.
That's the idea.
By the way, that Van Buren voice was from Seinfeld. Who said I want to do the Seinfeld trivia, didn't get that or missed it. So good job, Wataya.
Overall, I do think this is a good one. I enjoy it, and I think it'd be fun to play.
And we've had these sorts of things before, where we would have like a PC party duplicated by a mage, and so you meet yourself, and it's like very even. We've also had this where there's been other adventuring parties. These sorts of things where it's like that realization that we're not the only people in the world that are doing this sort of thing. Yeah, it's good.
For sure.
All right. Well, let's move on to our main topic. We are in our Places series. Last time we did Places of Need, right? Those places that are just kind of, they have to be in a society in order for other things to be there. Today's a little different. What are we talking about today, Adam?
Yeah, we're talking about places of note. I did want to point out as we're moving on, Barry said, couldn't a simple zone of truth or something like that do the trick for this thing? I think that's like a good way, like you get your mage to do that, or cleric,
you have
maybe.
A mage who has that.
That's right. Yeah.
And if not, I don't know as a GM if I would make that so easily available. It might be like, well, there's one, 2 towns over who's on a circuit. He'll be here in a month.
maybe an added quest element while people are hunting you to go find somebody who could do that is kind of cool. So I like that. So the places
and
that
Rob does know of a courtroom RPG called Justicar.
Justicar, okay.
Just in case anybody's looking for one, you've been needing that.
I guess I can't make that now.
Guess you can't make it. There goes the $1 million. Right.
Dang it. So places. We're talking about places of note today. Like you said, and I want to actually read a little bit again. This is that this World Builder's Guide to Societies book, Essentials for Writers, Game Developers, and Dungeon Masters. Again, thanks to Wataya Hotel for the lending of this book for a little bit. But I'd read this, and again, the place chapter particularly like stuck out to me as things that I think could like help just spur us on in our GMing to like help with ideas. It's like you get an understanding of place. It can generate a lot of like what comes out of that and who is there and all that kind of stuff. So I thought this was interesting, but he writes this about places of note just to kind of kick us off. Some places are not necessarily for society to function, but we find them interesting or noteworthy for other reasons. They could be locations where plots begin or rest happens. They might be landmarks for directions or add character to a setting or larger location. Some may be visually interesting or mysterious. They could be a base of operations for characters, a source of rumors, or a source of impending or immediate danger. There are many possible types here, but this section will focus on 4: social, arts and entertainment, residences, and landmarks. And as above, this goal is to be inspirational rather than impossibly comprehensive. So he goes on to talk about those 4 things, which we kind of did that last time of walking through those, but just kind of in general, if you hear places of note, what's the kind of stuff floating around for you, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it's the stuff that gives your world kind of personality, gives it its own kind of a showcasing of unique the uniqueness of your world. Those places of note are the thing that people are going to like look back on and remember. Oh, that was that game that had this, had this, had
Right.
this. That's the kind of places. Now, some of them are places of note that are going to be in every game. So we talk about, and I'm going to kind of do what we did last week, kind of go through all these. But the
Yeah, I
first
think
one
that's
is
good.
those social places, and what RPG does not have the trope of people meeting in a tavern.
Mhm.
Whether it's your PCs, that's how they get together, or this is where you begin to get some rumors and leads, or if this is just a place of neutral ground that different factions will come to
Right. Yeah.
talk. Who doesn't have those taverns and inns, but they don't have to just be things like taverns and inns. I think that's an easy one because, like we said, it's a trope. There's the rusty bucket and there's the,
Yeah.
the plump cow or whatever. And you always come up with a cool name. And if you do a cool enough one, like Adam we've talked about this many times, the sun and the moon, he has this location that was like one side is bright and like the sun and day, and the other is really, it's like more like a nightclub. It's blues and blacks and, fine leather, dark booths, it's like the sun and the moon. It made such an impression in all of us. And I may even be imagining it different than he does, but like the difference in the two sides, and yet they're one building, and like that kind of place immediately comes to mind when I think of what we're in now, the Jade Mask.
Right.
And so the same thing can be true, but you don't have to just use taverns and inns, as unique as they are. But there can be places like bathhouses. I forget if I'm thinking of a game or a movie I see where we met somebody. It was one of your games, right?
did
Where we met
Bathhouse,
somebody in
yeah.
the bathhouse. I think there was also a movie.
Oh, that was in the Jade Mask game. Yeah, you met Uncle, the Thieves
Yeah,
Guild guy, and
in the bathhouse.
Yeah.
We all had to go in this steam room, and we got on these
Yeah.
towels, and we're sitting around. And there's like these old men in different places, and you're just like, what is going on? Yeah, places like that. These are places, social places that are hubs of interaction. They can also be places like clubs where elites or intellectuals or adventurers go to. Those sorts of places where you network, you learn secrets, you hear
right, right.
rumors, you rub elbows with people who are influential NPCs. Those sorts of things, I think, are important, and you can go as common as the trope of the tavern, all the way up to very unique sorts of places.
Yeah.
I think of when I think of the social places, they can also include like not places that are always happening. So I was thinking when I was reading that of Sanderson's Alloy of Law, where they're in this big ballroom and some stuff happens. I can't even remember the two guys' names now. It's been so long since I read it.
Wax and Wayne.
Wax and Wayne, right?
Right.
And the time bubble and all this stuff, because some stuff happened there, and you know, it's a social gathering, and so there's like on one hand they're trying to like have this like polished kind of front, but at the same time there's people of different factions and influence there.
Right. Yeah.
At that meeting, and so places like that, like a big ball in a ballroom, stuff like that. That's very society, right?
Yeah,
These
yeah.
big parties. I think you had a wedding where at the magic
At the
place.
Lyceum. Yeah.
Lyceum, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, your
those
brother's
sorts
wedding.
of things. Yeah, and we use that very much. We rubbed elbows with NPCs of different factions and got to know what was going on, and there was the starting of some quests and stuff like that at that wedding. Any of those sorts of things, I think, can be those social places.
For sure,
And that's
for
the kind of thing I think of when I think of my game. I would even like look back at that like stacked house of knowledge. That's a social place. It's like a library, but it gives you a very definite feel. That was,
Yeah.
I think you guys went to two different libraries. One was very formal, but this one was like just books stacked everywhere.
Yeah,
that
right.
you, and they're all like not even spine out. Some of them,
Right.
and there's papers in them and stuff, and it's just stacked, like to the ceiling everywhere you go with. And so you can really kind of give a feel about the person that you're going to
for
meet
sure.
in this place or what this place is about. And it can be anything from a ball to a library to a tavern to a bathhouse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
These social places where people meet can be neutral ground, can be a place where rumors are heard, can be a place where quests are started,
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like the social, it wasn't it was subconscious if it was purposeful. I don't know, like if that can be true that way. I wasn't thinking this through, but as I'm like looking back on the recent campaign for me, it's that social played a lot of roles in that, because like you've
Hmm.
mentioned the wedding a couple times. So that, reception at the end with all these people. There was another time where you all infiltrated almost like a garden party manor
Right.
estate party thing.
That was when we stole
Um,
something. I
yeah.
catapulted up,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
forget what
You
we even
guys in the
stole, but it
middle of
was
all
cool.
that,
Yeah.
that was
A
happening.
heist.
Yeah, it was a heist. That was a heist session, and that was in the middle of a social gathering. Even like, you mentioned the sun and the moon. I do like trying to put twists on taverns and or that kind of thing, and that played out a couple different times. And I think even like there were some moments on the quay that like huge, all these boats and stuff strapped together, where there was some even like social interaction things, and
Where people
that
live. Yeah.
yeah, where they are living, and that we're going to get into maybe that a little more too here in a bit, but that played a role more than I even like was intentionally thinking about, I think. But something I read, the Serpent War saga from Feist, Raymond Feist, recently, and a thing that like stuck in my brain a bunch, and I don't know that it influenced the game yet, but I think it will in the future for this kind of thing. Is there's this it's a coffee shop, Barrett's Coffee Shop, or Barrett's Coffee something, and the thing is it's like a business kind of deal, and we talked about food and that kind of thing last time, but it's where the business of the city takes place. Like all the important businessmen come up on the second floor. They have their own tables. They're constantly having messages brought into them, like, oh, this is this trade
Hmm.
deal or that thing or that. And it's a very interesting. He set up a whole reason for that being super important. As time went on, for a while I was reading it like, why is this so important? But regardless of that, once it finally came to fruition, but also it was a very evocative, like, this is a really cool place to be thinking about, like the way this works. And I think that's
Hmm.
kind of cool in those games, if there can be a place that, especially if it's something you can come back to put that effort into making something cool like that. So that definitely like spoke to me a little bit as like a creation kind of thing. But I like those social places as like a starting place for plots, or like a furthering of plots kind of thing. Not plots, plot, like story can kind of come out of that. Missions and such can come when you meet somebody in a place that there's all this social gathering happening. The people aspect, again, like that's going to come up all the time, but in these social gatherings, they're social because they're people, right? Like they're there and you're interacting with different characters. And I really like just the idea of like rumors too, that there can be rumors floating around, rumors like the other adventuring party being out in the forest, can be like found in a social gathering when people are talking about the latest news kind of stuff. So that can help like move story and give hooks for people in those places too.
The second one, the arts and entertainment. As I was going through this is actually one I use less than the others, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
But this is the kinds of things where there might be, say, performance or expression. So, like you got theaters, amphitheaters, places that have drama on the stage,
Right.
concert halls, musical. Whether it's like a little stage in a tavern where the bard sits and stuff happens there. That's
Mhm.
probably more my speed than like the
Yeah.
huge
Right.
concert hall where maybe magical instruments and bardic performance kind of mix and something's happened to the crowd or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Circuses, carnivals, where there's like freak shows that ends up being like people being oppressed,
Yeah.
other
Right.
races, or maybe something weird's going on with someone who can see the future, or who knows. But these kinds of arts and entertainment based places. I was trying to think, do I use these very often?
Yeah.
Not
Right.
as much. There's also, when you think of arts and entertainment, you can look more to the arts, where it's like workshops or studios or artist galleries. I think I had an artist who was a sculptor, and he was putting these sculptures around the city of creatures. Well, really, he had this relic that would make, he could take a real creature and it made it like stone, looked
Right.
so
Yeah.
lifelike because it really used to be.
Yeah.
But then they all were breaking out, and you had to go to his studio. And in his studio, there was obviously some things that were not even out on the streets because they were so dangerous, and
Right. Yeah.
you had to end up fighting those.
Yeah,
So I
that's
used
right.
that a little bit. Yeah, but like I found I don't use a lot of these arts and entertainment type settings in my campaigns. Doesn't mean that they're not used sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way. That was a little bit less of a use kind of thing for me. I do like the idea of that, and like I think like artisans. Maybe I'm mixing. I don't know if I'm mixing into like other things, but like even like blacksmith type stuff, or those kind of like maybe a
that's
little
more the
more
craftsman.
craftsman kind of thing could play a role, but we're kind of getting into trade there, and it's again doesn't have to be so firm,
It
I guess.
depends. Like
But
if it's a place where these craftsmen create and then display, or maybe
right,
do things in front of people. So you can think like in Knoxville when you go down and there's those people like making mugs, and then you can buy mugs. Or
yeah, right,
same
yeah,
with the blacksmiths and stuff like that.
yeah. Maybe kind of again, I haven't used this very much. That you mentioned like circus or
Yeah, I
the
think we encountered a tent once at a
yeah.
circus that almost killed us. Right, Rob? Oh, look. And he just happened to put in here tents and outdoor music performances. So he was thinking of tents that kill
Yep,
people who
yep.
call themselves the wanderers, not the travelers.
um, yeah. I was thinking about arenas. Like, I think that could fall under that entertainment part, where if you get to the maybe not full on Coliseum thing, but like those kind of things could come up and maybe feel interesting. I do think it's
Yeah,
like
we have used like a coliseum or arena of battle kind of thing
yeah,
before.
right,
That would probably fall into the entertainment side
yeah,
for
yeah,
the rich anyway.
right.
We've done
Mhm.
those.
I find it interesting. I think it's like again, it kind of depends on what RPG are you playing. And I'm thinking kind of in terms of the fantasy
Right.
D20 kind of stuff right now, but you could do some cool stuff with like if you're doing more of a maybe Delta Green or Cthulhu or something like that. Like I think stuff like an art gallery, weird paintings that have mystical things going on, like that, there could be some weird stuff there with some like horror, even like the portrait of Dorian Gray situation or something. Like there can be some weird stuff there. I don't know how well that would play into fantasy where you're sword and board magic kind of stuff, but it could be cool. But I like the idea too. One of the modules that Sentinels Comics put out for their RPG part of it takes place at a concert, because there's this like music hero or music villain thing going on. And the cool thing about that is like that's a lot of innocence that you have to take care of while also having this massive battle on stage, basically. So it's kind of
Right.
it's kind of weird, but it's like that idea of like, okay, if something went down in the middle of a concert or a circus or one of these entertainment things that was like a little more real or going on deadly, you have those aspects of like, okay, there's this other, we got to not have collateral damage in here. We got to watch out. I can't just throw a fireball into that guy because there's 50 people around him, kind of thing, unless you're someone who does that. And then, okay. But the, like that adds an element, I think, to those battles when you have that kind of thing. And that's kind of a cool module to play because you're concerned about those and trying to get people to safety while, dealing with that. So I think those kind of places could work really well for that.
Yeah, Rob asked in the comments where would you put places like casinos and racetracks, and for me they kind of straddle these two because they are places of entertainment, but where I end up mostly using them is it's a place where I rub elbows with the underground element or the crime boss element or
Right.
something. So if you're at a casino, you could just go in and like your characters play some stuff, but more likely you're going to go in and while playing the stuff, you're going to interact with someone who's very shady or someone who has, information for me. I was reading the Lit RPG Welcome to the Multiverse, and they had that race thing where they were
right.
racing ships, and that was more of a you're in it and there's a battle between you and the other racers. So that would be more like a coliseum or arena where
Yeah,
you're
right.
you're thrown in, but there's people out there betting on you or whatever. But you
Yeah,
also are in direct conflict with somebody else
right.
in this coliseum or in this race. That might be a place where it's a little different, but most of the time, a casino or a racetrack for me is a place where you're gonna meet some of the underbelly of the city, because
Yeah, right.
that's the kind of, or maybe it's the people who are upstanding, but that's where you find out they have secrets and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so that's the arts and entertainment.
Yeah,
Like I said, I didn't find myself using those as much, but
right.
the next one here, the residences, I find I used more than I expected. But the residence is weird because, like we talked about, places of need, and it's like people need shelter, right? But
Yeah,
they
right.
put this here in places of note because you're not just going to go to every house along the way
Mhm.
that's boring and has nothing going on, unless you're just trying to show the flavor of what the city
Right.
is like. But as you begin to meet people and you go to those places where they live, it's going to tell you a lot about that person. It's going
Yeah.
to tell you a
Yeah.
lot about the city as well. So you got homes of the wealthy, people who have like mansions and estates. I think back to the governor who was always saying praise Tiamat because he thought all dragons were the same. And we had a dragon kin with us who was like grinding his teeth because this guy didn't understand that
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
different kinds of dragons. And he thought he was like making a good impression on the
We need that
dragonborn.
picture, by the way, sometime. We need to share
Yeah,
that
I'll have to
picture
throw
because
it up.
it's
But
amazing.
you know, mansions and estates like that, or you guys went in and like kind of did a raid on the youngest reeling, the one who ended up getting hung in that courtroom thing. You guys
Lucas.
broke into his mansion, and that gives you this idea of the lavish homes of nobility and the wealthy,
Yeah,
that
right.
their gardens and ballrooms and secret passageways. It's perfect for things like intrigue and theft, social climbing, getting evidence, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You also have like towers and strongholds of wizards or retired adventurers, places that hold a lot of lore, maybe even treasure, have lots of defenses. Those can be useful in a game. Places like hidden and exotic residences, things like people who live in underground places or floating mansions. I think in my dormant mind, we had the giant's floating
Yeah, right, right.
castle thing that you guys went into. As I was like looking through mine, let me just I made a little list here. See, we had the Lord of the Hunt when you guys did when the hunt was going on. You went into the tent of the guy. I forgot his name,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the chief. But going into that chief's tent told you a lot about who he was in that society. There was the guy who sent you to across. He had all the little ghosts hanging in his house. These like little
Um,
dolls of ghosts and stuff, and just going into that residence and the freakiness of that place,
yeah,
the oddness of that place,
yeah, yeah,
and you guys all had to like put a sheet over your head and all this kind
yeah.
of stuff.
Brynhike was the guy's son, but I can't remember. It's like Theglerman. I think that was it.
It's my game. I should remember that. I count on my players, right?
I'm the note taker for
Uh,
that.
Places like so early on in that game, you went to the hut of the hags, right? That place of the hags. But like more than that, I think you guys later met the one hag that got away, and she was
Yeah,
residing in the maggot tree.
the maggot
It
tree.
was
Yeah,
this
right.
like place that once you go inside, it's like very luxurious, but like it has all these defenses built into it, and it's
Right.
gross and decrepit. And there was a huge battle that happened there.
Yep.
And Brothmus's house, he was a wizard, and when you went to his house, you actually met this little mouse that
Yeah.
was
It's his
his
protege, right?
protege that actually polymorphed himself into a mouse and couldn't get out of it. The heart of the purple worm. There was a gigantic, huge worm that was petrified, and a guy who did magic and alchemy went in and hollowed out the worm and made like
Yeah, that's
residence
right.
rooms and traps and all sorts of stuff that you guys had to explore. And like these sorts of residences that are just very different are, like I said, it's the place where you can make your world so unique because you can think of anything, and that becomes like a residence that tells you a lot about the person that you're pursuing or trying to get something from, or meeting, whatever it is. And it doesn't always have to be the crazy, or the rich and the wealthy and these crazy things. Sometimes, like I said, those common residences that you enter will tell you a lot, like tenements in a village or communal housing, right? The long houses. There was one you did once where we had to go, I think it was, and there were these long houses of the elves. I can't even remember which game that was now.
It was the Impending Doom one. Yeah.
Right. Things like monasteries, where people live together in these places, these residences, that sort of stuff. It can be important, and they give story opportunities, right? Because you can again find what's going on. You might have to infiltrate like one of these places, one of the towers or the mansions. You might get an invitation to one of the common houses and begin to like meet some of the common people who are being oppressed. All that stuff. For residences. And I found that I do use those more. Sometimes it's like weird, like the Dungeons of Death. That was the home of those guys I hate. Dwarves, right? No, not, is it not dwarves? Right?
I think dwarves made that, didn't they?
I think it is. The dwarves made that, and they trapped it. So that no one could come in, and you guys had to go down there, and it was like the dungeons were all trapped and Dungeons of the Death. And see, I give common, I made them bad guys, the place where they live, but they get some FaceTime in my game, Wataya Hotel. So.
I like.
Anyway, I said a lot about residences. Is there any way you see that like these can be used differently, or you're like, I find myself using them like that, or different?
Yeah, I think those ideas, like you kind of reiterating what you said in some ways, the like seeing personality and character and culture can come out in that. You can show that stuff. I like that. I talked about that like estate part, the party at the estate, that was like, you got to experience this large mansion in that way. I really like, it's kind of a weird residence, but in Tifa's Edge, the Thieves Guild has the Warrens, and like they're multiple spots, but it's basically like you go down and there's just people with cots everywhere. That's like where they're, that's where they reside, kind of thing when they're not doing what they're doing. And just kind of showing some different things. I did that a lot. It was kind of part of the game. There's it was the first module, I think, that we like posted. It's the Curator, and there's actually like a play on that a little bit in that game, because you at one point it's like a one shot, and you go to the prefect to get the initial quest, and like his, like, I guess it's kind of his office, so it's not quite in the residence, but all of this stuff is like gaudy opulence. Like it's like he's like trying too hard. It's horrible. He has no taste, but he's just, if it's pricey, he buys it, kind of thing. And it's just nasty to even like be in the room. And he's supposed to be not a person you're really super excited to be working with. But then you go to the house of the elven maid that was taken, and like has disappeared. And you begin to see like you're looking at the stuff and it's like, wow, she has like really good taste. But as you go through the house, you realize she has really good taste, but those really fine things that she's trying to show off are only in the places that people visiting her would see. And all the other rooms are just like, there's nothing in them, kind of like, it's for show. And you're realizing you do some investigation, realize she's broke the bank by trying to like be the socialite when she doesn't have the money to actually do it, kind of thing. And it's leading clues, on and on. And there's another point that's optional, but there's a guy who also basically is in debt massively, but he had nothing to start with. So like, and you could be like, visit, his family and kind of ask some questions about like, what's the deal? Like, what was going on with him before he disappeared? And you're seeing those kind of, that's supposed to tinge like the story of the adventure, and give you some clues to things. But like all those houses, all those residences show some like interesting pieces, and you can kind of do that, whether it's massively about the story or it's just like this is kind of a setting. I think that that's helpful, to show those kind of things, give clues. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And then our last one, landmarks, right? And I love landmarks. I think you can have
Mhm.
a couple different kind of landmarks. There's natural landmarks, things that you can see like majestic landscape wise. So like I have a land called Telashiri, and it's almost all built behind this huge waterfall. Like the main city's like right up on the edge of the world on this waterfall. And then behind the waterfall on all these different levels are the places people live. And as you go down, obviously, it gets more and more dicey and the underbelly of a city sort of thing. So yeah, that kind of started off as a natural landmark, this waterfall that then built into a city. Or I think I had the arch where you guys went to make a wish, at the very right time. I can't remember if it was the new year or the moon or something. I had some time. The first person to ask the question would get it answered. Where else? There's some landmarks that are man-made or like sacred,
Okay. Yeah.
right? And
Right.
so like you guys passed the statues of the seven gods, and there was like this real reverence that happened as you came up on that scene and saw these huge, I mean, just towering statues,
Yeah.
and you heard people talking about them, and that was like one of the first times you guys really started to think about the gods
Right.
themselves and what they were about. Temple of Tears in the desert, right? There was this place that you guys went, and it was this temple that was kind of carved out of the sandstone and stuff going on naturally there. These landmarks are a big
Right.
thing
Yeah.
for me. I think
Yeah.
I had one once where it was I forget what I called it now. Blood of Kings, the 9 moons, right? There were these 9 different moons that you could go to, all of them inhabitable. All of them had very different environments. And I love being able to like really make the environment different. But the place you got to all those was like this Stonehenge place with 9 gates. And you
Yeah.
would go through and go to one of the moons. That was the way you got to the different moons. And so that's like one of these landmark
Mhm.
type places. That would be more of a natural. But what D&D campaign or I guess doesn't have to be like fantasy based. You could be space based or whatever. Doesn't have these place with ruins, that have ancient relics that you've got to find, and maybe has a lost civilization that
Yeah.
was
Right.
there, and you find something that's going to help you do whatever you've got to do.
Mhm.
Those sorts of things. And I think these landmarks give you like such a chance for exploration and discovery to happen,
Okay. Yeah.
such a chance of the mystic and the guardian beings that like are at
Right.
these places. Maybe even consecration or restoration to a place that has been defiled.
Mm.
You have those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Landmarks are a fun one to put in.
Mhm. Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah. I like what a landmark says about the history of a location. Like, I
Mhm.
think that's like probably my favorite as go to player mindset here, like the discovery, kind of thing. It's like I immediately engage with a landmark because it's like, well, why is that there? And I want
Right.
to know now why it's there, and follow that kind of deal. And I think of like um, going to your games. So the Purple Worm, immediately it was a dungeon at its heart. It's like we were going into
Hmm.
something, but it's also like you see this thing and okay, something happened here, or there was like the land of the giants, kind of thing. It's
Hmm.
like there's is that where that was actually on the other side of the world where the giant soared
Swords.
through the serpent thing, kind of
Right.
deal. Like that's another one where it's like sweet image, and it's like, okay, something happened here and I want to know more, kind of thing. So I find that pretty interesting to like draw into more of that historical thing. So if you got, people at your table that are love the discovery, that's a good way to do that. And another thing for me, I think that was like important and powerful with that is something I've learned playing both Ironsworn and now Starforged with Eric is there's excuse me, there's a like you roll on the oracle and it says, sometimes it's like you come across a landmark, and then as the group, like you're like, well, what kind of landmark could it be? And we have this discussion about that. And then that always makes me want to engage because there's some there's some adventure roles, and Eric's going to come and talk about Starforged in a few weeks, I think, and this will make more sense in retrospect. But like we figured out, okay, we come across a landmark, we decide as a group what landmark it maybe could be, and then there's a role of like, well, do we investigate this or do we move on, or like what do we do? And I'm always restraining myself because all I want to do is say investigate role. That's like what I want to do.
It's like,
and
why wouldn't we just made this awesome place?
Yeah, so that's me as a player, and I think that's a good tool as a GM is putting something unique in, and it could be some giant like Weathertop in Lord of the Rings. I immediately want to go do that. It's like you put something like that, or it could be something interesting in the dungeon. Like there's a unique statue that's randomly there, of this angelic figure. You come across it in the middle of a hallway, and you're like, there's a reason for this, and now we want to know why, kind of deal. So I think you could use that micro also, as well as like bigger landscape things. But I really do like the landmarks a lot.
And so for me, when I'm thinking about these four things, these places of note, and I think what is the role of these things? I think a big part is it, like you were starting to get at there, it shows cultural significance, right? It reflects the values of the people who at one time lived here or live here now. Whether it's like, a residence or this natural landmark that was left. It tells you about the history of the place, the eccentricities of the societies in your world. But I think as much of that, it gives like unique atmospheres. So we're talking about like the Tavern of the Sun and the Moon, right? Or if you go to a circus, the frenetic cacophony that is all around everything that's going on is very different than the somber awe you feel when you walk into the forgotten monastery temple and you're walking and there's the dust and everything settling. Yep. Or you come to this landmark that is so crazy. All of that enriches your world building and kind of the immersion that your players have. And it's very true that senses in detail, right? Describing the sights and the sounds, the smells, the textures of these places are huge for like making your players feel like this is an awesome world. And it adds that cultural depth, right? By showing different cultures, maybe even viewpoints of different cultures in the same place. Like you might go to one, they see it as like this monument of triumph, whereas another part of your world sees this as like the symbol of their oppression. And
right,
how does that all play together? But I think again, we've mentioned this already. One of the big roles of places of note, whether it's landmarks or an arts and entertainment place or a social place or a residence, it can often be places where quests and conflicts come about. It can be places where there's neutral ground, so you meet people from different places in these safe zones, right, that offer moments of respite for your party.
Right,
maybe it's a celebration that's going on or networking that's happening. It's where you meet important NPCs in these places of note. And so these can be incredibly varied in what they look like and what their functions are. But all in all, it's going to help you like really make a world that is cool and textured and believable. And it's going to give you a place for things to begin and happen, whether that's with NPCs or whether that's quests and things that you find and you begin to get. The places of note are important.
For sure. Yeah.
Anything else on places of note?
I really like thinking through these things. I think like there is like already we're like at the end of our campaign. We're kind of at like the wrap up epilogue kind of thing tonight as we play, and I'm already like I have these like ideas for them. I'm like I don't need these ideas right now. So
Got all these ideas.
yeah,
Hold them for another campaign.
Yeah, I need to. But I like these. Like I liked the last week with talking about like the different locations of food and government and education and trade, like those. But these I feel like hit a little different for me, specifically like these places of note more than the need ones. So
and these are typically the ones that when your characters think back, they're going to think of the places of note, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
like, oh, remember when we were in that canyon where there was just all these spires and we were all like having to hop across these spires while these birds were trying to ram us off? Or remember this city that was all connected by wires at the top of these canyons, and you had these magical things that would zip you along like on zip lines. Those are the things people are going to look back and be like, I remember that because of that cool place that was there.
See, Rob. That's cool. So I for sure.
So that's our places of note in our places series. We did places of need last time. We did places of note. Next time we're going to do places of what?
Veneration is where we're going to be. Yeah. So we got our NPC here. I did want to note that like there's a really good haversack question from Watai Hotel, but we're going to wait on it until next week, do the veneration before we jump into that. Looking forward to doing the places of veneration and talking a little more into some of those maybe holy sites and other such things. So for sure.
All right. So let's hit our NPC here. And then we might wrap up with a little something different here at the end of the day. But our NPC is going to be read by Adam today.
Jasper Oskimedes. Jasper Oskimedes, the remorseful wizard. He says, there's just some magical powers that shouldn't be meddled with, ever. He's in his middle years, still handsome and fit, with a professorial air. His clothes all come in muted tones and might even be called stodgy. Jasper will do his best to answer nearly all inquiries about magic, but his advice always comes with a finger-wagging warning. But watch out for such and such. In nearly every aspect of his life, he's known for his restraint. Beneath this measured consideration lies a deep well of remorse. For Jasper, the arcane arts are mainly a theoretical pursuit. The ivory towers of academia, a sanctuary. Whenever he is outside the halls of learning, when he's forced to cope with his real-life confrontations and decisions, he experiences discomfort, even panic. He clearly expresses disdain for any frivolous application of magic, and he demonstrates his own magical aptitude with great reluctance. In truth, he's afraid, paralyzed even, of making a mistake while casting spells. He's motivated in a way that he wants his students to develop a healthy respect of magic. And the background of this whole thing is that Jasper was a gifted wizard. In many ways, he remains so. As a young man, he went on many great adventures and had a reputation for using his magic in a cavalier fashion. Then the careless use of magic caused irreparable harm to a companion. Even though the victim forgave him, the experience and guilt caused him to retreat into a scholarly shell. This is Jasper Oskimedes.
Strangely, I really like Jasper.
I like him too.
It's strange because like when you play an adventure game, a role-playing game of whatever, fantasy or space or, into the world, whatever, you typically are enacting heroic stuff, right? You're doing adventurous stuff that you don't always do in real life. The truth about Jasper is, and this is maybe too vulnerable, but it reveals a lot of who I probably more am, and that is very cautious when it comes to risk taking. I am not like a big risk taker in real life, and this guy, I love the idea that he has like a lot of ability, and when he was younger, you saw that. He still has a lot of ability, but he is very reluctant, very cautious, very like, let's count all the costs first. Let's not be hasty. We shouldn't do this. And whether his stodginess and muted tones, which also for some reason appeal to me, whether it comes off as like a we should not do that. Just very scared. Let's take a, or like poppycock. Let's not do that. Kind of shrugging it off.
Right.
Whatever form that takes, I really like who this guy is, and I like the fact that like if he's with the party at all, he could do something that would really help them, but he will give every excuse in the book and hesitate and often they have to go ahead and kind of find their own way to do it. But if they ever get him to do something, it is amazing.
Yeah.
But then he won't like, he doesn't like when they try to praise him for it. He's like, no, because he's still remembering the thing that turned out wrong. He's still remembering when he messed up, and something about that flaw in this character and just the way he's chosen to live. Mm-hmm. I like this guy. Yeah. I could see using him through a session a lot.
Yeah. I'm a fan too. I think that's a great motivation thing, for the background, and love his personality quirks, especially in regard to magic. Like I feel like my typical, even if they have different personalities, the typical like magic user that the PCs are going to come across is usually pretty confident and powerful. It's like, or, just like I can do what I can do. And, sometimes even the opposite of what this guy's got going. So I really like that, and to like consider that. I think like this is one of those that I read and I'm like, I kind of like that for a character background, like kind of thing. Like that would be a fun to like, in my opinion, to like pull in and be like, no, that's how I'm going to function as the party wizard, is like, I don't know, like I need to be careful. And I think that could be interesting.
If you have this as an NPC, I guess even if you have a PC, but as an NPC, don't like throw the whole thing out in one session. Mm-hmm. Let them know him. Let him be reluctant. Let him always be advising why this isn't prudent right now and how we got to be careful. And then slowly, if your characters interact with him throughout the campaign, let it become known what happened that made him this way. And it'll make him a very loved, important part of the story to your characters. If this slowly unfolds and they begin to find out his motivation and his background.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm a fan. I like Jasper.
Yeah. So that's a good one. I would use it. Well, we're going to, instead of a haversack today, as we wrap up here, we're going to throw out, I have this book, I'm trying to remember who wrote it so I can give it the correct. Let me see if I can find the cover of the book here. It's written in like this cursive.
While you're looking for that,
Madeline Hale. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Evan had said, I enjoyed playing a reluctant necromancer, studied the school to better combat it, but hesitated to cast any spells of that type. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That whole idea of giving yourself like this reason to not want to do the thing that you're the best at.
Right.
is great. That's cool. So there's a book. I think she's had a couple books out. This was, I think, on Amazon is where I got this. Arcane Artifacts and Curious Curios by Madeline Hale. And it's kind of system agnostic. You can use these things anywhere. She just kind of wanted to throw out a bunch of like, here's little items, the little magic items that might be fun to drop into your game for no other reason, but that they make it magical and neat. So I'm just going to read. I just opened this kind of randomly here. I probably should be more systematic about it, but I'm going to read three or four of these just for you to get like a flavor of like what kinds of things could be. So this is in the artist section, since we were talking about arts and entertainment earlier. So she starts off with this sculpting clay. It's just a 12 by 12 inch by 12 inch block of gray clay. Has a strong smell of wet stone. It's quite firm. It has an enchantment on it. The user can touch the clay, utter a command word, and indicate anything within eyesight. And the block of clay will begin to shed small shavings, and after 10 minutes, it will have formed a nearly perfect 3D recreation of the target, right? And so the history is that clay like this is quite cheap to buy. Most sculptors scoff at the idea of using this, right? Because it's not true art. This is like a 3D printing sort of thing, but magic. Instead, this clay is often used by those who can't afford to hire an artist to sculpt the face of a beloved family member or a pet or something like that. And then they kind of show it off, but everybody knows it's not real art. It's like Thomas Kincaid art versus like like Michelangelo or something. It's like, oh yeah, you can get this in the store. So you got this sculpting clay, and you could sprinkle this in just as something that, like, the person you're talking to is like, oh yes, my son. If I have shown you the sculpture of my son, and a real artist would be like, ugh. But you could use that. Next, we have the copycat brush. It's a paintbrush, short, fine bristles, handles made from pale wood, barely visible beneath the coating of colorful painting smears. The enchantment is when set to canvas or paper, the user can indicate any painting within 15 feet, and the brush will set to work, darting around the pages of its own volition. And after 20 minutes, it produces a fairly accurate copy of the original artwork. Always a way that people can, make copies of things. I lost my place in here. I kind of scrolled too fast. And
both of these are interesting to me based on what we just talked about because of the arts and entertainment section of the places of note. Like, these are both things I feel like could very easily be something connected to like drawing a party into something weird's going on with these things, and like they're like active in these places. So yeah.
So the history of this brush is it was used by a woman named Stelazar Steele. She was a famous art thief who stole hundreds of paintings during her long and productive career. She eventually sold all of her paintings and retired, but her legacy lived on. She was so famous that the copies she produced have become nearly as valuable as the originals. Oh, wow. And now her brush is out there somewhere, and you may come across it, right? The next one's also a brush. We might let this be maybe this one or one more. This is called Diana's brush, an older high-end paintbrush with dark green handle and slightly frayed tip. The name Diana has been painted into the side of the wood on this brush. Whenever this brush is used to paint, the painting will always, no matter what you try to do, it'll turn out to be a portrait of the same woman. She has brown hair and a dreamy look to her dark eyes. No matter how hard the user attempts to paint something else, the painting will always include this strange woman, and you won't even realize you're doing it. As you're using it, you'll feel melancholy when painting with the brush. You may be painting a building, but somewhere in one of the windows, there will be this woman, or somewhere in the landscape, there's this woman who ends up the brush just paints it without you even realize it. No one's sure who this woman is or where the paintbrush came from. That's the whole entry.
I like that.
You can take that and run with it wherever you want. Like, why does this woman always show up? Who is this woman? Who made this brush? How did this come to be? And that can open a whole little encounter or quest.
I think that'd be super fun to use in several different types of RPGs for sure. That's cool.
And we'll do one more. Haven't read this one. Prophet's Loom. These are, like I said, these are all artistic in nature. The Prophet's Loom, a small lap loom made from polished light wood. The enchantment: when a tapestry is woven in this loom, there's a 50% chance that it'll contain a prophetic design that relates to the user's future. Okay, the history of this: the loom was often seen in the lap of Saint Aurelius Greydown, a priestess known for her ability to see into the future. She would weave away at her loom, only to be occasionally struck by fits of prophetic vision. A young cleric remained at her side at all times with a pen and paper ready to record anything she said at a moment's notice. And so there's 50% chance that this will show a prophetic scene. That could be really useful for like you kind of dropping things in for your PCs, right? Yeah, you need a way for them to think about like a cave. Well, they use this loom, and maybe there's a 50% chance that there's like this cave or something on there that would lead them forward. That could be kind of cool.
I even like that
the Prophet's Loom.
I like that alone, but also even just that story of it's like a seeress or somebody who like has this loom, and that's somebody you could go to. Like, that's kind of a cool way to connect things in that also.
Right. So you don't have the loom. You can't just use it whenever you want, but
somebody has it
while talking to you. And there's this little dude sitting there waiting to write down anything she may like start to spew as she's going into these bits of prophecy. So
those are good.
This book is cool because it just gives you inspiration for items that can then kind of lead to other things, or they could just be cool little items that you drop in to give your campaign a real sense of magic.
Yeah, I love it. So that's cool.
Okay,
awesome.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Again, we have been in our Places series. We've done Places of Note, or Places of Need, Places of Note, and next time we're doing Places of Veneration.
Veneration, yep.
So come back and join us for that next week, and we will see you guys then.
See some of you at Winter War. Thanks all.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.